You know, high finance and environmental action are coming together in one of the most dynamic regions on the planet. Today, we're going to break down a really powerful set of rules designed to fund a sustainable future, the ASEAN Green Bond Standards.
So let's just start with the central question for the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. It's a massive one, right? How in the world do you build the roads, the power grids, and the cities needed for a prosperous future without completely wrecking the planet in the process? It is the classic dilemma: development versus sustainability.
And this dilemma, it's right at the very core of the region's future. So let's break down what's really at stake here.
Look, the need is just undeniable. We're talking about huge sums of money required to build up infrastructure and improve everyone's quality of life. But the old way of doing things, just building stuff without thinking about the environmental cost, that's just not an option anymore. So where does the money for a new, greener path actually come from?
Well, this is where a really clever financial innovation comes into the picture. The solution is something called a green bond.
So what is a green bond? At its simplest, just think of it like a loan, but it comes with one crucial string attached. An investor lends money to an organization, and that money has to be used for projects with clear environmental benefits. It's basically an eco-friendly IOU, making sure that capital flows directly into building something sustainable.
So who came up with this rulebook? Well, it was the ASEAN Capital Markets Forum, or ACMF, a group of top financial regulators from all across the region. And their involvement is absolutely key, because it gives these standards official weight and makes sure they're actually tailored to what the region specifically needs.
But hang on a second. How do you make sure that a green bond is actually, green and not just some clever marketing ploy? Well, the ACMF's answer was to set up a super clear set of rules, which brings us right to the heart of the standards, the 4 core principles.
Now, what's really smart here is that the ACMF didn't try to reinvent the wheel. They built their entire framework on top of the globally recognized Green Bond Principles, or GBP. This was a genius move, really, because it immediately aligns the regional standards with international best practices, which is exactly what you need to attract global investors.
Okay, so this whole framework rests on 4 simple but really powerful ideas. First up, use of proceeds. The money must fund eligible green projects. That's the core promise. Second, project evaluation. The issuer has to have a clear, documented process for picking those projects. It keeps everybody accountable. Third, management of proceeds. The money has to be tracked, totally transparently, often in its own separate account so there's zero confusion about where it's going. And finally, number 4, reporting. Issuers have to regularly report on how the money's being used and, importantly, what the environmental impact of their projects is. It's a complete life cycle of transparency from start to finish.
All right, so what does green actually mean here? Well, we're talking about real, tangible projects. Things like building solar farms, developing networks of electric buses, creating sustainable water systems, and constructing super energy-efficient buildings. This isn't some abstract theory. It's all about measurable, real-world impact.
And here's a point that is absolutely crucial. To fight against greenwashing, the standards explicitly ban any funding for fossil fuel power generation. It's a hard line in the sand, and it sends a really powerful message about the region's commitment to a clean energy future. No wiggle room there.
So we know the standards are built on a global model, but what gives them that specific ASEAN flavor? Well, they include several key features that really tailor them just for the region.
This is where the ASEAN standards really add some teeth. While the global principles are more like voluntary guidelines, the ASEAN standards add very specific requirements. For one, projects must be physically located in the ASEAN region. And while global standards can be a bit broad, the ASEAN standards, as we said, explicitly ban fossil fuels. And here's a big one. While global principles only recommend transparency, the ASEAN standards require public disclosure for the entire life of the bond. So they've basically taken a great idea and made it stricter, more transparent, and totally laser-focused on the region.
Okay, so what's the real-world impact of all these rules? What's the bottom line? It's all about creating a trusted, reliable pathway for money to fund a greener future for millions of people. So here's the key takeaway. For investors, it creates trust and seriously lowers their research costs. For the organizations issuing the bonds, it unlocks this huge pool of capital that's specifically dedicated to sustainability. For the region as a whole, it establishes a brand new, reliable green asset class. And maybe most importantly, it protects the entire market's integrity by preventing greenwashing. Those false environmental claims. It's a win-win-win.
You know, this quote from the ACMF just sums it all up perfectly. The standards do two things. They provide certainty for the people investing the money, and they provide clear guide rails for the people using it. It's all about building a solid bridge of trust between capital and green projects.
And we'll just end on this thought. In a world that's facing all these complex climate challenges, it's pretty amazing to think that one of our most powerful tools might just be a clear, transparent set of financial rules. It just goes to show you that directing money with a clear purpose can truly change the future. Thanks for tuning in.